Okay, well, welcome everybody to all the new members, all the attendees that I have not had the privilege to meet yet. I know there's a couple of you here in the Zoom call. For any of you, those as well that maybe chose to attend today's meeting in person. Hello, my name is Norberto. I am the director of the DFIR research team. We have been doing a lot of work in the past several weeks, mostly with like competition prep, Hive storms, and took a lot of time, but we are going to be getting back into the swing of things very soon. Towards the beginning of our school year, we one of our general meeting discussions in the server for our research team was pertaining to log analysis, and so today I'm going to be talking about an extension of that topic, particularly the SIEM, the SOAR, XDR, and SOC automation, how that plays into a SOC environment, and basically some of the responsibilities of a incident responder slash security analyst for those of you that might be interested in a role of that nature. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and begin. Here's a quick agenda for the day. Going to go over some flashback. I mentioned earlier that we talked about this briefly at the very end of a log analysis discussion, go over some definitions, get into a little bit of detail with regards to the SIEM, the SOAR, the XDR, as well as a couple other little tidbits that are relevant to all of these tools, really, and particularly how they work together and sort of the future of the SOC, how these tools are kind of becoming integrated, as well as some some common vendors and companies and the type of work that they're doing in this space. Okay, so this particular slide was the slide verbatim, the exact slide that I used for the log analysis meeting. It was, I believe, in early October. And so we're going to be continuing that today, particularly with the SIEM. So a SIEM, for those of you that were not able to attend our log analysis meeting, the reason that this relates to log analysis is because the security event or security incident and event management platform solutions, there's several of them. We'll be talking about a few today. These are primarily for the purpose of log aggregation. So there are some of these that we'll be mentioning, particularly the ELK stack, which I'll go into a little bit more. And that's actually going to be what we're going to be building together on Friday's workshop. So we're going to have a chance to get really hands-on with that, build it from scratch. ELK is really cool for several reasons that I'll talk about a little bit later. But in general, the SIEM is security, stands for Security Incident and Event Management, and it is a piece of software that collects logs and data points from several different tools and endpoints on either multiple machines or if you want to assess like a single machine. There's different ways that you can lay out the architecture for that. And really that kind of events that depends on the implementation, the particular SIEM solution that you're going to be using. So they have some slight variations, some slight differences, but really what you want to take away about a SIEM is that it's a centralized log aggregation platform. And with this, you can do a lot of cool things, including assessing trends. You can get like a single pane of glass look into your overall like network infrastructure. And it also gives you the ability to do like aggregate analysis that kind of gives you a little bit of a better idea as to some of the potential pitfalls exposures, vulnerabilities, as well as the ongoing events, which is where the event management comes in. And that is basically what will feed into an organization's ability to respond to incidents. So I particularly want to emphasize the difference between a SIEM and an IDS IPS because when I was first researching the topic, they did seem a little bit similar to me. And we've spoken about IDS IPS quite a bit in the DFIR research team server. But there is a big difference in that an IDS IPS, you could think of it as sort of like a guard at the gate of your firewall, observing the network traffic coming in and out, and securing your data by being able to take actions in certain points, and it basically gives like additional functionality to your firewall. A SIEM solution, on the other hand, while it does offer that same observability functionality, it goes deeper into the observation, gives you more flexibility in terms of what you're able to observe, being able to add different endpoints, different types of tools and plugins, and it gives you a much broader depth, a breadth of observation than an IDS IPS typically, but what an IDS offers on an IPS that a SIEM would not is being able to actually address those network incidents that maybe you might send red flags or fall in line with a particular known attack of structure or vulnerability. So
you have a question in the chat though regarding SOFOs.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Let's see. Can I talk? Sophos is SIEM agent. Sophos. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with Sophos. I have heard about it in like vendor booths at a couple of conferences before. But let's see.
If Alejandro wants
it
to
does
elaborate.
It does look like it is at least somewhat in that vein. But I'm going to be showing you guys like some images, screenshots of a few different platforms, so you kind of get an idea of what a SIEM looks like and what to expect. But this, let's see. Yeah, it is in the same vein of tools, but it seems like it's more of like an endpoint detection, an EDR tool. But yeah, don't quote me on that. I have to look into it. I'm not particularly familiar with the tool. But yeah, my apologies for the questions. But I do want to mention, I'm going to be going through this in a couple sections. So I'll stop at the end of different sections. You'll notice the screen of when a new section enters to take questions pertaining to that particular topic. And then that way, I can be sure that we are able to get through the material and also address your guys' questions as they come up and we discuss relevant topics. So yeah, feel free to answer them, drop them in the chat. But yeah, I'll be checking on them throughout the discussion. Okay, so a couple examples of some SIEM that actually segues nicely into our next point. Splunk. This is probably one of the more common, more widely discussed tools in the ecosystem of SIEM solutions. The thing about Splunk actually is that it didn't start as a SIEM solution per se. SIEM was kind of on the fence of the security and the data world. It was more so targeted towards data aggregation and being able to like visualize things with dashboards. But over time, it developed into, one of the more widely used SIEM solutions out there. Splunk is pretty famous. There are actually some modules on TryHackMe that allow you to get some exposure to Splunk try to play around with the configurations, the playbooks and deployments, and I think that's really valuable because normally Splunk is a very expensive tool. If you want to purchase it in the industry for your organization, you're going to have to be able to justify a cost of several thousands. I believe it goes up to like 30,000 even, depending on your deployment and your network infrastructure. So yeah, these tools can be pretty expensive, but that will be a relevant point of discussion that I'll be talking about in a second with the ELK stack. So Azure Sentinel, this one is a very capable tool that is somewhat new. It came out, I don't recall, I want to say 2019, 18, 1920 maybe actually. But this is a cloud SIEM tool. So the functionality with Azure Sentinel is a lot more involved, and it actually gives you a lot more capability than you have in a lot of other SIEMs. So this, contrary to my point earlier about IDSs, taking action when certain rules are violated, or certain firewall rules trigger alerts or responses. Azure Sentinel does have a lot of remediation functionality, but what it's known more commonly for is its SIEM capability. So in the charts on the right, you'll see kind of like a diagram of the different types of endpoints that can feed into Azure Sentinel. So again, this applies to ELK. This also applies to Splunk. But the great thing about these solutions, they can take data in from all kinds of different environments and tools, and you can basically leverage your existing logs. And rather than having to check on different tools and try to keep up with a million different things, it brings everything all together so that you can assess everything and what's relevant under one tool that's basically monitoring all of your other tools. So the open source SIEM, ELK stack, this is actually what we're going to be covering on Friday. So in the workshop, we're going to be working together to build an ELK stack and kind of go over some of the ways in which this is used in an incident response type of scenario. So you can kind of see how what to expect, and also how to build one for yourself, because these are known to be a little bit difficult to set up at the beginning. But we'll walk you through all the steps, and you'll get a chance to see how this would be relevant in like an incident response type of scenario, during an attack, shortly after, and help in sort of the investigative process to highlight certain key elements and potentially sources of evidence for an attack. So the three main components of ELK, unlike the Splunk platform, which essentially comes already built together, you do have to, you can, I think, deploy nodes and basically cover different organizations or environments, and then have them aggregate into a single machine. But for the most part, the configuration is pretty straightforward. With ELK, however, it does come with its pros and cons. And one of the cons with ELK is, like I mentioned, is a little bit it is a little bit time consuming to set up. It can seem a bit overwhelming and tedious, just because variations in the configurations for different particular endpoints and detection methods. But one of the beautiful things about ELK is that it has the same virtually the same sort of functionality that you get with a $30,000 tool like Splunk for free. So Elk is open source. It takes a little bit of work to set up, like I mentioned, but that work, if you're willing to go through it, and hopefully, you know, if you guys are able to attend the workshop on Friday, you'll get a chance to build that together, and you can even keep that, you know, for your future use. You can add to it, make modifications, adjust it, and customize it to fit your own unique purposes. So an Elk stack is free. It's open source. The code can be assessed, and it's particularly composed of three major components. So the diagram here above, that shows you a very simplified but common baseline for all Elk stacks. So you typically have your beads or your log sources, which are an optional additional fourth component that will either feed into your log stash, which is essentially an ingestion. Not only does it ingest and aggregate your logs, but you can actually perform data operations on it. So if you want to like maybe perform like pass the data through a function and enrich the data in some way, maybe like correlate it with certain things, get them all unified into one format, things of that sort, maybe filter out particular pieces of data. That can be done through Logstash as a sort of a pipeline intermediary between your data points and your centralized monitoring. So from your Logstash component, essentially you get to feed into the second link in the chain, which is your Elasticsearch database. This is a web-based indexing and data storage, log storage mechanism that is very flexible and powerful, and it works hand in hand with Kibana, which is the tool that allows you to see it, open it up on your browser, and gives you on the menu functionality and ability to drill down into particular sets, set up unique indexes, and create visual dashboards that are relevant to your environment. Okay, so I won't belabor the point because we'll be talking about this a lot on Friday, but just wanted to give you guys a preview of what we'll be discussing. Okay, so this, when you guys see these screens here, this is basically where we'll be taking a break for questions, these blue and white section headers. So next up, we'll be talking about the SOAR. But before that, let me go ahead and take a look in the chat. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask as soon as I answer this one.
We did have one question actually regarding like the Elk stack. Somebody was asking if there's any like kind of resources you'd recommend to experiment with.
For experimentation, well, I am going to be putting out a OVA file, and that's already kind of built pre-configured with all the basics, as well as kind of like a MD README document that walks you through the installation and configuration steps if you want to like kind of go through it yourself. But unfortunately, I don't know of any particular like sandbox environments that offer that. But that is something that I was able to get together, and I will be dropping a link to the download for that, so that you guys, if you want to get a head start, you know, that'd be great. Feel free, and you know, maybe that'll make the experience a little bit more valuable, and you'll come in with questions that may be a little bit more specific to whatever your concerns or needs happen to be.
That'd be interesting.
Yep, should be a good time. So anybody else, any questions on the SIEM before we move on? Feel free to chime in the audio if you happen to have a headset. Alrighty. Okay, well then we'll go ahead and continue. Yeah, I'll just go over another little quick burst, and we'll take a break also in case you guys have any questions on the SOAR. But without further ado, the SOAR is the next tool on our list of tools. And as indicated here, stands for Security, Orchestration, Automation, and Response. And this tool is something that works very effectively with a SIEM. So this applies also to a couple of the other tools that I'll be talking about later, like XDR tools. But the SOAR really complements the SIEM in a very, very powerful way when you have both of them together. Because essentially what a SOAR's job is, what its role in the SOC environment is to respond to incidents automatically. So it's not so much meant to be a tool to replace an analyst as much as it is to supplement their capabilities so that they can kind of automate some of the more mundane tasks and have like additional, you could say, eyes on the environment and alerting them to more specific threats and actually being able to respond to those threats when they're kind of low-hanging fruit, you could say, so that the analyst can focus on bigger picture issues. And with that comes the ability to do a couple other cool things that we'll talk about later. So the way I like to frame it is a SIEM is basically looking into the past all the way up to the present. It's taking in data, your log data from of events that have been occurring on your network, and it's giving you a better handle on that data. So it gives you the ability to be able to quickly understand what's going on in your environment. And then you, traditionally, this would be the point where the SOC analyst would take in that information and be able to kind of put the pieces together and figure out, okay, we're being attacked here. These three events are related, and this is what's going on. And then they go ahead and deal with the incidents in that manner. But one of the problems with SIEMs is, unfortunately, it can lead to a little bit of alert fatigue if not properly configured. And even when properly configured, a lot of times it can alert you to an incident through different sources, say like your firewall and your IDS and maybe your packet inspection beat, your network monitoring beat in the case of the Elk stack. In those cases, you might have the same alert from different sources telling you that you have an incident, but they're all referring to the same thing. So, it becomes a little bit overwhelming to think that, there might be a bunch of different incidents. You have to go address them all one at a time and kind of try to learn to prioritize. But a SOAR is able to take care of a lot of the more, I guess you could say, mundane, tedious kind of tasks and lets you focus on bigger picture issues. So it uses automation to be able to take care of that using what are called runbooks and playbooks, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that's essentially like your arsenal to be able to deal with either common threats or maybe vulnerabilities and threats that are particularly pertinent in your type of industry. That happens, and I've heard about how that plays a big role in OT environments, for example. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I'll try to move it along because we still have a lot to cover. Okay, so to use kind of an analogy, run books, playbooks, grimoires of sort. I mean, if any of you guys have played like an RPG video game in the past, you know that the sorcerer always has these books of grimoires or whatever, and they're able to cast spells with that. And so that's essentially how a SOAR operates. So you have what are called runbooks and playbooks, and runbooks are essentially written documents, typically written in like PowerShell or some type of scripting language, maybe written in some type of coding language. That is getting a little bit less to be the case. Now we're kind of moving into a code-free phase at the moment, but traditionally and up until recently, and even primarily at the moment, that's how it would be done. So they can be fully or semi-automated, and main difference between the two is that the runbooks are the ones that basically have your actions, and they'll be the ones that will inform the SIEM, okay, take this and this step in order to go ahead and deal with these alerts. And the playbooks kind of take in the information and they store their data in the form of like lessons learned, you could say. And they try to, and the purpose of them is to make sure that your future incident responses are done in a manner that's consistent with any compliance frameworks that might pertain to your industry. Like I know health has their HIPAA standard, and other of these cybersecurity frameworks, or additionally, it could be procedures, policies, and cultural values that are important to your organization. You kind of bake those in, like vaccinations, Caleb. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Also, that's a very good analogy. These are essentially the run books would be your vaccines, and your playbooks would be kind of like your medical book of the diagnosis and the steps to take to deal with them. So yeah, thanks for that input. So I'll be going into a couple examples very briefly. Splunk Phantom. I couldn't help myself. I had to make a reference to Ghost in the Shell because it's Splunk and Phantom, but it's a shell, like a terminal shell. So yeah, it's a really good movie. I highly recommend it. But yeah, I won't belabor the point. Splunk Phantom is essentially like a it's essentially a step up from the Splunk that we are kind of familiar with, that is more so dealing with as like a SIEM, but eventually over time, as Splunk kind of became really popular in its use for security, they created Splunk Phantom, which is the complementary SOAR tool that goes with Splunk the SIEM, and like all the other tools that we'll be talking about, it offers the ability to deploy and configure runbooks. You could set up the conditions and the steps that you should take when those conditions are met, and they connect and tie in really well with whatever SIEM solution you're working with. So in this case, if you happen to have Splunk and your company has the budget for it, then Splunk Phantom would be a really nice tie-in because they have a lot of that interconnectivity, a lot already built in with the proper security in place. So another one that is another big player in the industry is Palo Alto's Cortex platform. The Cortex platform is one that involves several different tools, but of those, their SOAR solution is the XSOAR. So Cortex XSOAR it combines functionality of security orchestration, case management, threat intelligence management, and which we'll be talking about a little bit later, as well as collaboration. It is a really useful way for different organizations and professionals to be able to share information in certain contexts. So yeah, I'll drop the PowerPoint later on if you guys want to explore some of these links and take a look for yourself at like some of the reports and videos, and kind of just dive into learn a little bit more about um, each of the tools that I'll be talking about. So at this point, let me go ahead and take a look at the chat. Okay, let's see. One way that SIEMs work together is almost like an immune response. Yep, vaccinations. That's a good way to put it. So information fast transmission. Yep. All right. Okay. Yeah. So I already went ahead and answered that. Short answer, yes. Anybody else have any questions before I continue?
So typically, what kind of information would a SIEM even be like holding, like at least in like a business sense? Because I think that a lot of people have issues with kind of visualizing exactly what is going through like a SOC. And I'm kind of
Right.
curious on like a good way to describe it.
Sure. Yeah. So it's mostly like things like the logs that you would maybe have already like on Windows through like Event Viewer, like you would ingest those types of logs, basically like maybe login attempts, for example, would be a very relevant one and one that I'm sure is used in most SIMs. But yeah, attempts to log in, failed attempts, IP addresses, DNS requests, of machines coming in and out of your network, and mostly like technical information. It doesn't like go out and look for like personal information or identifying information really. It's more just to kind of like find out where the issues are coming from to be able to address those issues. But yeah, that's a good question. But it's mostly I mean, MAC address information might be another thing, but oftentimes telemetry is another thing it tracks, like the health of the overall system, maybe the CPU usage, like if your CPU suddenly shoots up to the roof, but nobody's made any changes or to their workflow, that might be something that's worth looking into, and that would be where you would want to configure an alert to, be deployed to the analyst so they can go ahead and take a closer look.
That's understandable. I know actually a lot of the entry level positions I've been seeing open right now have been mostly SOC based. So it's definitely an interesting skill and a very important skill, honestly, if you want to go and get more into blue teaming careers, just for the rest of y'all too. I do see a lot of SOC positions that typically will lead into bigger positions later on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the entry level stuff though is usually having you do that initial log analysis and like really understanding what goes through a SOC, especially for a lot of companies, just because a lot of them are hosting in-house, from what I've seen.
Yep, very true. Alrighty.
Do you want to go and plug your CISA thing too?
Yeah, so, well, actually, sure, why not today? This might be a good time for that. Later this, in a few weeks, actually want to go ahead and let you all know, those that are either in attendance, if you do feel like learning about this a little bit more and trying to get trained to become a SOC analyst, we're going to be hosting a series of study sessions in a couple weeks. So the exact date and time I've not determined yet, but it's going to be right about the end of finals week. So you guys hopefully have a little bit more time, and we'll be walking through that together. We'll have like weekly meetings so that we can all try to get certified for this type of position. CISA Plus, for those of you that don't know, it's a certification for the SOC role by CompTIA. They're the same people that do the Security Plus, the Network Plus, and this one's a little bit less known, but it's one that's a little bit more specifically focused on SOC type of roles. And like Jenny mentioned, although SOC analyst roles, like level 1 analysts, are one of the more common entry-level positions. A lot of times it's how people will move from like service desk or help desk into cybersecurity. That's kind of like the next logical step. But for those of you that really end up finding this as like your niche, there are, you know, levels that go above and you become level 3, level 2, level 3 SOC analyst, and that kind of involves a little bit more of the big picture, proactive threat hunting, which we'll be talking about in a minute here as well. So, so yeah, there's a track for progression if you want to just focus on that as your career. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I'll be posting about it on the DFIR server. So any of you guys that are interested or maybe have not joined our server yet, feel free to let me know, and I will send you an invitation. Okay, so moving forward, this is, we'll be talking here about the cyber kill chain, real-time data-driven incident response, kind of like the way that the industry is moving towards in terms of SOC analyst positions, and some of the more, I guess, cutting edge solutions and responsibilities
real quick,
with regards to that. Sure, Caleb, is that you?
Yeah, that we're at 12:50, so
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the reminder. I'll try to pick it up here. Yeah, but this is the second to last section, so I'll try to just scroll through this one. Again, I'll be dropping the PowerPoint later on if you guys want to like go into this in more depth. So I'm just kind of going to skim through this. But the cyber kill chain is one of the kind of fundamental research papers with regards to blue teaming. It essentially describes the process of a cyber attack from the perspective of an attacker. And in those cases, you know, there's usually a series of steps that need to be taken in order for the next one to be possible for the next one. You know, eventually that kind of escalates to the point where they're able to get access to a system and perform whatever activities they're intending to do to disrupt the environment. So the paper, the link here will link you to the research paper itself. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, this is a simple diagram, shows you the steps, and but essentially the takeaway with this is that by focusing on any one of these links and being able to disrupt it, you basically stop the attack in its tracks, and it makes it that much more difficult unless they're able to find another avenue and start the chain again from the beginning. But it does put a big dent in their ability to progress through that particular attack vector. So SOC of the future. As we're kind of alluding to throughout the discussion, the future of SOC is basically involving more integration with the several different tools, being able to have them operate as a single tool and in a unified platform structure. Some individuals are thinking this is eventually going to be automated completely. I don't know if that's true. Others debate the case and think it's going to be more of like a way to empower the SOC analysts. So, but we'll go into that in a sec. So yeah, this is a YouTube video. I'm not going to play it right now because it's too long. But this was a discussion about this particular topic, and it's pretty recent. It was just from the conference 6 months ago, I believe, in June. I actually had a chance to go to this, which is my second conference ever, but it was really cool. I didn't see this particular talk, but the video is relevant to the discussion today. So he's the CTO of Palo Alto, who's the company behind the Cortex platform, which I brought up earlier, and we'll be bringing up again a little bit later. But you know, his opinion is that it's going to be self-driving SOC in a few years. And another talk that kind of lends some insight into the direction of where this is going. Vasu Jakal, she's the corporate VP of security, compliance, identity, and privacy. And their whole take is that the industry is moving towards increased inclusion and making these tools accessible for more people at the lower level. So eventually we'll have a lot more analysts in the field, and they'll be a lot more capable with tools that are a lot more effective than they are today. I'm sorry. Okay, and then another one. This one I couldn't find the talk because I guess it was, there's some of them that they don't put out to the public, but I did get a chance to see this one in person, and later on I ran into one of the speakers at this talk, Natalie Pator, when I was taking a look at the NSA booth, well, the prime takeaway from this is that I brought up the fact that, I used to be really skeptical of the NSA, and but like one of the things that kind of got my attention and changed my perspective a little bit was how they shifted approach into kind of like trying to get the community more involved and being a little bit more transparent. And so she told me that she was actually the one that was behind the Ghidra reverse engineering release and making that open source to the public. And that's kind of like the what they were trying to get across. So takeaway was, it seems like it's and this, I mean, in conjunction with a bunch of other talks I've seen that have been strongly emphasizing the importance of the public-private partnership. Seems like there's ongoing effort to get more people engaged in cybersecurity, lower the barrier to entry, to improve overall collective well-being, almost as if they're saying, they don't have all the answers, but they could use a hand, and anybody is welcome to join. So that seems to kind of just highlight a little bit of where this is going in the future. So threat intelligence lifecycle. One of the tools I think we spoke about earlier talked about threat intelligence, and this is essentially, you could take a look at the chain here. The process usually goes in circles. You get new data, you incorporate it, you disseminate it, get feedback, and then you look for what's relevant at that point. Again, just to kind of skim over this because I know we're a little short on time. The tip is sort of a lesser known, smaller tool that kind of fits into this whole SIEM SOAR ecosystem, but it particularly focuses on threat intel, which could be anything from security-related RSS feeds, threat intel reports that are published, to like traditional FCs, and TTPs, indicators of compromise, and tactics, procedures, techniques, and procedures. Yeah, you can go ahead and explore that a little further, taking a look at that link, and that'll give you some good places to start looking if you choose to pursue that. So XDR is kind of an honorable mention because this is the most recent addition to the SOC ecosystem, and if anything, this is the one that kind of shows like the epitome of like where the industry is going overall. It uses a lot of machine learning, a lot of breakthroughs in that area in order to be able to correlate events. And so where the SOC is kind of like the eyes, and our SOAR solution is the response mechanism. The XDR kind of takes in some of that response mechanism from the SOAR, but also is able to move you up the chain of the kill chain that we discussed earlier by kind of speeding up the process, getting you ahead of the attacker in a way, and being able to deal with threats before they're actually manifest in your environment. So by taking care of, by kind of taking in that SOAR functionality, being able to take care of some of the low-hanging fruit, it does it in a little bit more, it's kind of the next level of that. So using the machine learning, it's able to correlate the different events as a single event instead of having to deal with them individually, as even a SOAR would have to address them individually. We'll just get through a little bit faster. It actually does the correlation and can detect when events are part of the same campaign. And then that way it'll only alert you as to, okay, you have this one incident, and it'll give you more detailed information as to what the incident actually is. And so to give the analyst a faster response time and ability to get to the meat of the issue quicker. More on threat hunting. Threat hunting is
Roberto, it's one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just got like a couple more. Mind if I go over a couple minutes or? Yeah, I'm sorry. And I know a lot of you guys probably have somewhere to be, so my apologies for going a little bit over the time. Yeah, I don't know. What should I do? Should I just cut it short?
Yeah. Slide probably.
All right. Well,
I know people are
sorry, did you say
last
last
coming
slide?
in. Yeah, just go to the last slide. Just give us your final thoughts. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, so I mean, those were some different platform solutions, kind of give you guys a picture of what, because a lot of these platforms are now kind of coming out with their next gen things and how they're attempting to address it. And in a nutshell, it's typically done through a aggregation of all of these tools into like a single platform. So whether it be OT, like with the Dragos, which I was going, the Azure Sentinel also offers a SOAR component, which I didn't get to really talk about, but just know that that is also built in and being developed to a greater extent on the SIEM, as Microsoft pushes out more updates. So yeah, this is where I wanted to mention that we're going to be doing a CISA Plus study group. Yeah, just stay tuned for that. If you guys are interested, we will be getting started with that likely in a couple weeks, and you're all welcome to join us. So with that said, any last minute questions or? Okay, well, I guess that'll do it for now.